So making informed decisions on a business when you have someone by your side that's experienced that does, 5 million plus in revenue is important. And I don't think I'd have the confidence to do it if it wasn't for that. So that's definitely a big part of how I've gotten to where I'm at today.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Mason and Dan. We have a really exciting episode where we got to break down a huge flipping and wholesaling operation out of San Diego. But before we get into that, Dan, how are you doing?
Great, man. I was taking notes throughout the podcast, gave me a lot of ideas of things I need to improve and kind of KPIs I need to be better tracking. So really enjoyed it. I think that was educational for the both of us.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah, so today we are talking to Josh Giordani, who is the owner of The Direct Buyer here in San Diego and host of the Modern Mindset podcast. And he has quite the operation. And ultimately, it's just like Mason and I's business, but it's for houses. So he's built himself a massive direct-to-seller marketing business where he flips, wholesales, and wholetails houses all over San Diego. So hearing from somebody who's doing this at scale in such a competitive metro like any Southern California market was really insightful. We learned a lot. So I'm excited to bring him in. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have this conversation today. We met through a mutual friend out here in San Diego, and you've got quite the operation. So can you give us just a little backstory, your experience within real estate and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So got into, I'll start fairly early and I'll just make it somewhat quick. I did cell phone sales for a while. 2007, I was going through kind of a tough time in life, trying to figure things out, 17, 18 years old. My dad had just gone through a divorce with my stepmom, and he said, "Hey, come move out, come get your real estate license, and let's get you into real estate." So I took a leap of faith, packed my car the same day. At the time, something traumatic kind of happened with a girl that I dated all through high school. So I called him and I was complaining about it. Same day, packed up all of my shit and moved to Palm Springs. I stayed out there for a year, got my real estate license. This was in 2009. I moved back to San Diego to do full-time real estate here because this is where I was born and raised. And then 2017, had an opportunity to go into title insurance. I was getting recruited at the time. And I think I was like 20, 25, 26, something like that. I forget exactly how old I was, but decided to just take a leap of faith and jump into that and see if I liked it, because I wasn't enjoying traditional sales in real estate. The traditional buying and selling process with, traditional homeowners and things like that. I just didn't love the emotional side of that business. So decided to take a leap of faith. 2017, went to title insurance, actually just retired this April from title insurance. And I've met a ton of amazing people within the real estate space and somehow stumbled on flipping houses. So while I was in title insurance, agents who I worked with would bring me opportunities, and I would bring them then to other investors. And finally, one of my friends was like, "Well, why don't you just bring them to me and you can have an equity stake in these deals?" And at the time, I didn't have any money to invest or anything like that. So I started getting equity interest in flips that I would bring to him. I would negotiate. I would bring to him. We would do together, and he would give me, an equity stake in these deals. So this was 2019. I ended up doing the first one. I think I made like $25,000, like side cash, like just extra money. It's like, man, this is super cool. I'm like, let me go out and actually target these more with agents who I work with. So then I went on like a prospecting journey of going to all the realtors who I worked with in title insurance, built up and started doing, I think every year after that was roughly 10 to 15 deals. So I stacked up enough cash, and now I have a massive operation that will do multiple seven figures. This is my first full year solo without a partner or anything like that. I don't JV on any of my deals anymore. And have a full scale operation, tons of flips, tons of wholesales, and decent sized team, a small intimate team, which is great. But it's been fun little journey.
That's pretty cool. I know you've gone big pretty quickly, but hearing that backstory, it sounds like you had a little more runway than I realized. But I think that's smart. And a lot of listeners, if anyone wants to start their business or go full-time in their business, I think it's smart how you kept your job for a while, did it on the side. You still have that W-2 or whatever the income was from being within the title world while you figured out how to build a flipping operation. So to that end, today, you said you have a small team. What does it look like? What kind of revenue are you doing? And is it mostly flips with some assignments? Is it mostly assignment with some flips? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I have 2 closers. I didn't start like that. When I first got started, hiring your first person was always very scary. You hear horror stories of losing people or them trying to start up their own business and all those things. I've had great experiences. I have 2 closers, Valerie Madison. Madison's been with me for over a year. Val just started earlier this year. We did have, I have a marketing team. There's 4 or 5 of them that do all of my KPIs, my marketing, my data, all of that. And then, of course, I have an accountant and from that side, from a financial standpoint. Right now, we've actually pulled back a little bit in terms of how many deals we're doing. Right now, I'm really focused on quality versus quantity. We are getting to the point where we're getting somewhere between 10 and 15 deals a month, and it was just too much to handle. I didn't have the operations side figured out, the transaction coordination side figured out, and I actually do have an operations manager as well. I forgot about that. But yeah, now I'm tapering back a little bit to go after more. We're still spending the same in terms of marketing, but I'm being very particular with deals that we're locking up. So right now, like in our CRM, I think there's 47 to date. That we have a mixture of wholesales and flips. Our average profit per deal is close to $70K. And right now I am buying more flips than I was earlier this year. I think it's important for, anyone starting an investment business to understand that capital is important. And when you're spending a high spend on marketing dollars, it's very important to get quick cash instead of longer term cash. So with wholesales, it's been great to just get quick cash. And then now I can diversify a little bit more and take bigger deals down, bigger projected profits down, and feel more comfortable doing that with my big marketing spend.
That's great. And I do want to dive into the tactics in just a bit, but with your podcast being The Modern Mindset and you talking about kind of leaving the residential retail side of real estate because of the amount of emotionality that's involved in all of these transactions, talk a little bit about how you keep that emotion out of the decision-making within your own business. Because for the solo entrepreneur or the small business owner, it's hard not to mix emotion and business decisions because you're like, this is my money. If I lose this money, I lose everything.
Yeah. So like if we're talking in terms of money and marketing spend, I look at that like investing into the stock market, and I'm investing in my team and myself. And I believe as long as you have the right tools to invest in your business, you have to invest in your business in order to grow, and especially with the amount of growth that I've taken. So I've always looked at a money without emotions, and I've just looked at it like an abundance mindset where if tomorrow I needed more money, I'd be able to find it and I'd be able to make more money. So that's always been my mindset when it comes to money. Being an entrepreneur is one of the scariest things that you can possibly do. I don't think people really realize, I didn't even realize myself, like when I quit my corporate job in April, I still sometimes think about, even regardless of how much money I'm making now, and I still made really like good money when I was there, but I still think back to having a consistent paycheck and having consistent things roll in. So that has always been a mental challenge, I think, for any entrepreneur, especially in real estate, because we're looking at deals and revenue and when your next paycheck's coming in. So I think, those types of things are very challenging, but something that's helped me. Last year I did 70 audiobooks. So I listened every single day for 30 minutes to an hour. I'm not a fast reader, so I had to do audiobooks. But that mentally got my day started every day that I would do that. And it fired me up, and listening to other entrepreneurs and big business owners, learning their experience and how they navigated through tough times made it a lot easier for me to go through that in my own business.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners and myself can definitely empathize with the golden handcuffs that will come with that corporate job of it's really nice getting paid bi-monthly or every other week, and just knowing that regardless of, certain fluctuations with the market, that you're going to get that paycheck. But it seems like what the theme of everything you said right there kind of focuses in on is just consistency of, that with your marketing spend, you have to consistently spend X amount of dollars to get X amount of deals that generate X amount of revenue, or Y and Z, to keep variables consistent. But on the tactical side, you mentioned that you're focusing a little bit more on quality over quantity. 10 to 15 deals a month at $70K per deal. That's a shitload of money, which is fantastic. It's a lot more to manage on an operational side. But what led to that decision? Was it, a constraint within the business? Is it shifting market demands? Is it government regulations? What do you feel like it is that made you guys make that tactical decision?
What I realized is we were locking up deals a little higher than what we should have been. And this was over the last 2 months before interest rates have dropped. So we had, in San Diego market, and I'm sure in other markets, we hit this, it was like maybe 60 days ago, where buyers were really getting more conservative on deals. So our fees actually reduced pretty significantly over that period of time. And we did have cancellations. And so for peace of mind, when we're dealing with 15 plus sellers, I think at one time we had little under 30 transactions in our pipeline at one time in the last 30 days. And it was chaotic. And for me, having peace of mind to sleep at night and still be able to be functional in the business, on the business, all those things, doing, just under 30 deals a month or have that much in your pipeline just takes up way too much mental capacity, especially when our fees are getting reduced. So like we had deals that were like 5K assignments, 10K assignments, 20K assignments. So instead, I want to focus on, okay, let's get the quality deals where we can make our standard wholesale fee or our higher flip margin. So I feel like we're getting good deals, good quality deals to where I don't need to do 10 to 15. I can do, 5 to 10 and still be fine.
Yeah. No, that's good insight. So when you're monitoring everything, you talked about KPIs, you mentioned your marketing team and having all that tracked. What are those key metrics that you and your acquisitions people are looking at to kind of help inform your decision-making?
Ooh, there's a lot. Okay. So yeah, on the acquisition side, let's say, for example, we have a lull for a month. I have what's called an active scorecard. So every day the team tracks how many calls they're doing. So each Valerie and Madison track exactly how many calls they're doing. They track how many process calls they do. So we have a 2-part close because we buy virtually in San Diego. So we don't go on physical appointments in most cases. We do 25% of the time, but most of the time we're doing these all virtual. So we have a 2-part close, we have a process call, and then we have an offer call. So they track their process calls and offer calls each week and how many dials they're doing. If I see how many quality conversations they're having, how many process calls they're having, and how many offers, I know we should hit our metrics in terms of active deals that we get each week. So that's one side of it from like an acquisitions perspective. Then the other side of that is, let's say, for example, they're not getting their process calls and their offer calls. Then I'm looking at my marketing and what's happening with our inflow of calls, where our leads are coming from, how many leads we're getting in, and all those things. So there's several different pieces or puzzle pieces that have to get moved around a little bit to get exactly kind of the right formula. So I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, one of my closers, she's like, I haven't had a process call in 3 weeks. And at first, your gut instinct, I'm sure you guys thought of it, was like, oh shit, she's not making her calls, right? But I looked through her active scorecard. She made more calls than what she made the week previous. And so I'm like, okay, so let me go look at my marketing. Let me go find where these red flags are in the business. And so I went to go look at the marketing, And it was because our lead inflow was different than the month previous, and we weren't getting quality opportunities like we were before. So the interesting factor of that is that I've changed just a few things in some of our criteria with direct mail, and that's what hindered our results, because I actually changed it to what wasn't giving us results before, and I took away the thing that was actually bringing in the most amount of deals in specific criteria. So then I reverse engineered it. I put it back in. What's funny is that I realized that it actually saved me $15,000 a month in marketing, because the thing that I was spending over here wasn't producing nearly the same amount of results that I was spending here with the smaller amount of drops with specific addresses. So tons of different KPIs for all of it. So like I have stuff for PPC, PPL, direct mail, cold calling, all of it. And I track all of it you got to know what your return on ad spend is, right? Like, when you're investing in the stock market, if you're getting an 8% return, you look in Webull and it says what you're up this year or annually or monthly or whatever it is. Same thing with that I do with my KPIs with my marketing budget.
Totally. Yeah. This is fun to talk about. And for anyone listening that doesn't do this at all, it's so important. Alex Hormozi drills this point home on every other podcast. I love listening to those because it makes me get my shit together. And I did a pretty thorough analysis recently and didn't realize the extent to which cold call was giving us a much higher return on spend compared to mail, and especially in competitive markets. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't take the time to run my numbers and check those KPIs. So I was actually taking notes from what you were saying there. You gave me some ideas of additional ones I should probably be tracking better. So let's get into that a bit. I'm curious with your marketing, what are you spending a month, and then what's the allocation look like as far as cold calling and those employees to do so, marketing spend for mailers, PPC. Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah, so it's changed over the course of this year a lot. So initially, I'll just break it down a little bit. Initially, I'll break down the whole thing. I won't break it down a little bit. I'll break it down a lot. So in the beginning of the year, we had multiple cold callers. What had happened is there's new rules that came into effect with the do not call list. You had to make sure you're properly scrubbing all of the DNCs off for your cold callers. So there's a lot of people who were getting fines for not doing that, for calling people who were on the do not call list. And so we found it to be that we weren't getting quality opportunities from any of the cold calling leads. Also, with cold calling, your cash conversion cycle is much longer, right? If let's say you get a lead today, it's probably not something you're putting in contract until 6 months from now, right? It's more of a pre-conversation to a longer result. When it comes to PPL, when it comes to PPC and direct mail, our cash conversion cycle is probably 60 days, 90 days max if it's a flip, right? Like maybe a little bit more than that, but I would say like there's deals that we've closed with PPC, PPL, and direct mail that we've gotten paid in 30 days from receiving the lead. So with my marketing and what I've tried to accomplish is that I want speed to lead, cash conversion to be quick. So I've focused strictly on inbound stuff now. So for the last 3 months, only PPC, PPL, and direct mail. Direct mail is probably my biggest spend. And then PPC and PPL are still up there. I, on average, am spending somewhere between 50 and 75 a month on marketing. It just depends on what time in the market I am. And I know people maybe give me some shit about this, but I'm not buying heavy during certain periods or seasons of markets. So, and sometimes with our direct mail, I've changed some things and some variables where our spend has gone down a little bit and up a little bit and down a little bit. So I've made some adjustments, but yeah, somewhere between 50 and 75 is what I'm spending.
Yeah, I think, being able to have that data and look back and see which method is the most effective and which method is the most effective, depending on the time of year, based on what your business model is really, really crucial. I just started running social media ads through Facebook, and the results been pretty incredible of how many warm inbound leads that are decently qualified are coming in. And I hadn't done any of the PPC or PPL or social media before, and it's exciting to see it work. But Dan and I talk about it a lot of you still need to keep doing the stuff that has worked before. But if you don't have the data on what's worked before, you might double down and send the wrong piece of mail or wrong type of mail at the wrong time period to, that ends up just wasting a lot of money. But going back to your closers a little bit, and I appreciate how you mentioned if their KPIs, if they're not hitting whatever goals that they have, you look internally at whatever processes you have going on upstream before potentially blaming them. But how do you feel like as a manager, you're effectively incentivizing them to close deals that are aligned with the business? And then also on the reverse of that, how do you hold them accountable to make sure that they are effectively hitting those metrics?
So it's their goal. If they want a specific amount of closings, I'm just holding them accountable to what their goals are. My expectation when someone comes in, if they don't want to close 4 deals a month, that's okay. That's perfectly fine for me. So if their goal is 2 deals per month and that's what they want to close and that's where their income level aligns, it's totally fine. I just may need to hire someone that matches what the overall business goal is. In terms of keeping them accountable, we do have a very structured, and I'm not the best, I'm still trying to get better at this, but we have obviously our team meetings, and then we have one-on-ones that I meet with each of them and to go over all of their calls. I do call reviews with them. We'll go over their metrics. We'll go over also what their goals are. So every week we're still revisiting all of their goals. And I want to know, like as an owner, as a business owner, what things are important to them. Are you looking to pay off debt? Are you looking to buy your first house? Are you looking to buy a new car, right? Those things to me are all driving factors of someone's overall why and why they do what they're doing. So you always want to revisit those things and push them to do that. And so that's something that, we try to incorporate every time we have our one-on-ones as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Are these commission only people?
No, salary plus commission.
Salary plus commission. And then are they all local to San Diego?
We're all in office. Yeah.
All in office. That makes sense. Walk me through a little bit around your hiring process, because, and maybe specify the personality traits that your best closer has that you look for in potentially new salespeople that you're bringing on.
Yeah. So I've never made them take the DISC test. I've actually hired, Madison used to be my best friend's assistant during COVID, and she got laid off. I was looking to bring on an assistant, and she was that fit. So I just went to go to lunch with her. We had the right vibe. It was great. And it's worked out ever since. Valerie was my more stricter hiring process where I interviewed, I think 10 to 15 people. And she was so persistent in the follow-up that I couldn't not hire her. She just wanted it so bad. And literally no one else out of the 10 to 20 candidates that I interviewed, no one sent me a follow-up text, email, phone call, nothing. And with Valerie, I think I ignored her for a couple of those phone calls and texts. And then finally she just was like, your opportunity is calling me. Can you meet with me today? And it was Sunday. And I was like, let's come to the office. So we sat down, we had a conversation. It was on Sunday. I gave her my phone, and I pulled up my CRM with some old leads, some old cold calling leads. I'm like, here, make a few phone calls. Here's the script. And she did a great job. She ended up landing a deal her first week, $45K deal. We have an onboarding process through our coaching. So she went through, it's basically 4 days of full acquisition, CRM training, how to make calls, how to upload your call logs, how to have proper conversations, all those things. But yeah, so I'm not one like sending DISC tests or doing anything like that. I think if I was to, not advising that to anyone, if I was to hire now, I'd probably hire a recruiting company to do that for me. Because I really truly believe like I could go off someone's vibe. And to me, if it doesn't work out in 30 to 60 days, the worst that can happen is I have to lay them off.
Yeah. I think it's a good approach where if you have that intuition and the intuition has proven correct of, okay, well, the vibes were right. They're a beast at follow-up. They're detail-oriented. It has so far worked out where, if you're on the reverse side of that of like, man, they felt like a good fit, and that's your 15th good fit hire that has not worked out, you have to switch things up. But
I think I will definitely have to switch things up as time progresses. I think I got lucky with who's on the team now, but as the business scales, and again, when I say scale, I don't know what that looks like yet. I haven't kind of wrapped my head around where I see the vision in 5 years from now or 3 years from now. I like it being very intimate, but I think if I was to get to a point where, we had 5, 6, 7 closers, there's no way that I can go off, vibe and intuition. It would have to be more off structure and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Hiring has been a challenge for me, but learning slowly and steadily, and it's so key to being able to build a business. So to that end, about where you're going, what your goals might be in 3 to 5 years. When we spoke last, I know you said you were pushing towards having your first $1 million month.
Yep.
How's that going? Does that look feasible this year? And do you think you'll be hiring anyone soon, or keeping things as is for now?
Yeah, I think we'll do that in September. So next month we should hit that in September or October. I don't know exactly how it's going to go over, but we should get fairly close to that goal.
That's excellent. What's profitability look like on that? Profit margin?
I'm running at like a 65% profitability in the business right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that's great. I want
60 to 65, something like that.
Yeah. That's exciting. And I kind of bookmarked in my head what you were saying earlier about, I'm going to shift for a second and then come back, because I wanted to ask this question. You mentioned you've always had more of an abundant sort of mindset with money. And this is something personally, and I think I speak for plenty of other people in the business, I have not had. I've held myself back tremendously. I've been doing this since 2019, 2020 is when I got into land, and I've definitely held myself back by not thinking of marketing costs and employees as being investing. Do you have any thoughts or advice to someone to get over that mindset and get over a fear of investing money in a business to grow? Because that is certainly something that's held me back.
I think what can be challenging with that, and I'm just trying to think back to when I started this, is I was still, I had my corporate job and I had a big stack of cash from the flips that I was doing before. So I was not afraid to go out and spend, because I had a big, decent sized nest egg to go in to do that. If you don't have that, I could see people being more fearful about spending. But it gets to a point where I think if you can grind it out, like really do some of the get back into the mud and go do the things that, like, for example, like if our business slowed down completely, I would get back on the phones, I would go door knock, I would go figure it out, right? If like my marketing dollars disappeared, I would make as many phone calls as humanly possible to go get more money, to stack it up, to go and continue to do that spend. Would never allow myself to get to a point where I was running out of money. So I think if you had that mindset where you're like, I'm going to go call as many realtors as humanly possible, or homeowners as humanly possible, to get as many deals in the pipeline, and then all of a sudden you do all these closings and you have $200K in the bank, at that point you should be like, all right, I'm going to take 50,000 of this. I'm going to spread it over a 5-month period. This should turn in, this 50,000 should 5X. So then I'm going to take that money and reinvest that into marketing. And then you still have your other, 150,000, and you're keeping that aside. You're feeling safe. And then all this other money is just turning over. So that's basically, if I was to do that, that's what I would do. So I've taken all the money that I had as a nest egg and just continued to reinvest that over and over and over again.
How do you ensure that the deal cycle time is quick enough to make sure that your coffers are getting replenished? Because I think that's one of the challenges, depending on the type of business you're in and the market cycle, or the market that you're actually in, where, hey, I used to be able to turn these land deals over in 30 days and now it's taking 300 days. How do you kind of make sure your business is having deals go full cycle quicker? Because I think you were saying 60 to 90 days, give or take.
So that 60 to 90 days would be new leads,
Okay.
not paid. Like once we have them under contract, we're getting paid 30 to 60 days out, depending on if it's a wholesale. Like if it's a wholesale, most of those deals are 30 to 60 day closes. If they're a flip, let's say we're closing in 30 and then, start to finish, once closing happens, we're getting paid back, let's say 90 to 120 days. So with me, I have so many deals constantly in the pipeline that I don't worry about that. In the beginning, when I first started spending money on marketing, and for everyone like listening, I don't want people to think that, me spending 50 to 75K, I started much smaller, right? Like October of last year, I think I only had, a 5 to 10K marketing spend, but I was still getting one or two deals from a 5 to 10K marketing spend. So, and there would be some months where I wouldn't get anything. So I had 2 months in a row where I didn't get anything, but I would still spend that money. And then those leads would slowly trickle in even from that same marketing, but it may have been a few months down the road. I think now I've just given myself a massive runway from the start to now that I have consistent deal flow, but I think you have to start somewhere with a small spend, consistently have it set aside to where you'll know you can, because you can measure these things, right? Like my KPIs measure how many addresses I need to hit to get one deal. Right now for me, it's 7,800 addresses. 7,800 addresses. So I need to hit 7,800 addresses in order for me to get one deal. So you can use these industry standard metrics to reverse engineer it, but you just have to have that set marketing budget that's going every single month. And eventually 6 months down the road, you'll be like, man, now I'm consistently closing a couple deals a month. That revenue is consistently coming in and you'll be good. But in the beginning, it is more fear-based. You are going to have to spend and you may not receive for a little while.
Yeah, that right there is the challenge. And I think it's why a lot of people will get started in this business and then give up. Because, I mean, just like you said, say it's 60 to 90 days, up to 180 days for cold lead gen to actually turn into a deal. And then another 30 to 60 days for you to get paid on it. I mean, that's anywhere from 1 to 9 months before you actually get paid from that marketing dollar that resulted in that lead, which is why you have to, test things out for a long time before you can gather enough data to ensure the statistical significance of it. And in that interim time, while you're doing this marketing and lead gen stuff, are you going out and finding buyers? Do you already have a huge buyers list for all these wholesale deals? Or is San Diego such a competitive market that you're like, if I get a deal, I know I can just blast it to the ether and that thing's going to be gone, scooped up right away?
Yes and no. So I did have relationships because I was in the real estate industry of investors. I did find someone in my market because I think I shared this with Dan when he was on my podcast. My first wholesale that I did on my own was in February of this year. So I never even knew, I never had an assignment contract. I never even knew how to write it up. I never even knew what that process looked like. So when I say that I started this year on a lot of this stuff, it's all very, very new for me in terms of how many deals I've done. I've met a ton more buyers since then. And it's really just from talking to people in the market of what's working, what's not working, going to networking events, things like that. But also, in most states like California, we can pull LLC documents. So people who have bought in multiple houses and LLCs, you can skip trace that, have a company, then cold call it, get proper emails and information. So now, my buyers list is right around 400. If I send out a deal, most likely I will get that deal sold within 24 to 48 hours. And if it's a bad deal, then it's sitting. And I got to figure out where and why that is. But yeah, it's taken a little bit of time to build that list up, but I didn't overcomplicate it.
Sure. Yeah, I think I just want to highlight what you said there about not stopping your marketing spend even when you had a few months that didn't nothing materialized, because those lead measures are what make you the money, the lag measure in 30, 60, 90, 120 days. I've seen so many people stop the lead measure when things are slow, and so they never get that regression to the mean where they get the deals and they get the ultimate profit. So that's an important point and something I had made a mistake on years ago many times. So moving on and kind of sticking to the whole, or moving to the topic of market specific, a couple things I want to hit on about San Diego, but the big one is so many people, don't want to do business in California in general. So I want to talk about that, your opinions there, what you found having your whole business here. And then number two, just operating in such a competitive metro, pros and cons of that. But I'll open up to you to the first part of the question there.
Yeah. So in terms of not operating in San Diego, I think a lot of people would look at that, because that could be construed as like owning rental property in San Diego. So I could see that being the case. If that's what was that what you're referring to?
That was somewhat unclear. Just doing business here in general, a lot of people shy away from it. So I look at it, I think, well, that higher barrier to entry and dealing with the frustration, and given how high the prices are, that might actually almost create a benefit doing business here in general, but especially a real estate business like yours. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Not really. I think a lot of people are scared. So like, I'm in coaching, and so I've gone and I traveled and I've talked to people at the coaching company that I work with, and everyone asks me about being in an expensive market or overly saturated market or a more challenging market. To me, it's my backyard. It's what's been easy for me. I take that back. It hasn't been easy, but like, it's my backyard and I understand it. If I was to go to another market, I don't know that I'd be able to comp properties as quickly as I can. You're making less fees, but you're doing higher transaction volume. I think there's pros and cons, but I think it's preference. And maybe people are scared of competition, but to me, I thrive in competition. I look at the people who are my number one competition, and I want to know what they're doing and understand and compete at a high level. And that's kind of where I've been. I'm not scared of being in California to do business. But I can see that. I mean, a lot of people have that fear mindset. I literally don't care. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. That was slightly a leading question, because I kind of knew what you were going to say. From my perspective, doing business here, where I think the average home is over, or median home price is over $1 million now, or at least close if it's not, your fees are so much higher. Most people with a similar business to yours, if you're doing it in the Midwest, your average profit's going to be a fraction of what yours is. So I think that's a huge advantage. And I also just think it's cool that it shows you can start your business in a major metro where it's competitive and still get deals. I've found this in the land business too. In fact, a lot of times the competition is really bad. Maybe that's less applicable to what you're doing than land, but some of my favorite markets are the really competitive ones, because the competition isn't great, doesn't do a good job of follow-up, doesn't have the same level of legitimacy. So yeah, I wanted to emphasize that point, because a lot of people shy away from competitive markets.
Yeah, for sure. I've gotten that a million times, and I don't necessarily understand it from my perspective, only because of what you just said. Like, I would rather if I could spend the same on marketing. And I think for the listeners too, if they're looking into, or they are flipping and wholesaling, your cost per contract is probably less than mine if you're in Ohio or in somewhere in the Midwest, right? My cost per contract is probably much higher than what someone in those areas would be. But it's not that much higher, but also my returns are that much more, right? Someone's cost per contract in Ohio could be, let's say, $4,500, but mine is, let's say, $7,000 or $8,000, but my fee is also 10 times that sometimes, where theirs are only 2 or 3x what their spend is.
Yeah. I've found the same thing with even just rental properties. I've definitely been happy with the ones I bought in more expensive areas over the years. The rents and everything goes up more. It ends up being very substantial. So one more question just on the market. I wanted your opinion, your feedback. What are you seeing? It's late August 2024. Kids just went back to school. Is it still kind of in a lull here? Are things picking back up again? What are you seeing in San Diego right now?
In the last 30 days, so since interest rates dropped, we're seeing a pickup. So I listed, it's funny, there's been a few flips that I had on the market previously, let's say 45 days ago before interest rates dropped. I got way under ask, lots of renegotiating on prices and on repairs and all that stuff that comes with it. And then 30 days later, we listed one, a flip in the same area that was nicer, and I ended up getting like $40K over ask of what the value was. So right now, and I'm seeing this across the board with my wholesales too, because I only take on a couple flips a month. My wholesales, we do quite a bit more than that. I think we're probably 80% wholesale and 20% flip. May actually even be more than that, like 90% wholesale and the rest flip. But I'm seeing buyers get more aggressive on prices now too. So like when I'm sending out deals as a wholesale, I'm sending it at an aggressive price, but now I'm getting over what I'm even putting it out at. For example, I just sent one out earlier this week at 610, I think, or 620. I ended up getting like 640. So I think buyers are getting more aggressive now that this interest rates have dropped. It's kind of leveled out a little bit. We'll see what happens. I don't know, because we're also going into an election. So it's kind of like we're in this weird market for the last 2 years. It's been like a roller coaster of emotions for people. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think I just got another news update on my phone of mortgage rates drop again, in anticipation of this. And we're recording this August 22nd, 2024. So maybe by the time it comes out, they could have done something else. But Josh, on the system of your business, I imagine you guys have some sort of formula in-house that determines whether or not you're going to do a flip on a deal or a wholesale, and just wholesale it. But how replicatable do you feel like your system is? As in, if you wanted to scale outside of the San Diego market and move, call it nationwide, do you think you would be able to do that with the systems that you have in place, and just have a bigger team?
Yeah, I think we could. But I think there's the reason why I wouldn't do that, and I've seen a lot of big national companies do that. I just think there's so much still more opportunities that I can have in San Diego to get the same amount of revenue instead of going national.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and especially with kind of what you're doing now is even, scaling back a little bit within the business, not necessarily from a revenue standpoint, but just a volume standpoint. And on that, for people that are newer to the space of, active income generating real estate businesses like wholesaling or flipping, and whether it's houses or land, do you feel like they should kind of do what you did of let's try and get a ton of them and, see where the system's broken and then scale down a little bit and just go for quality over quantity? Or do you think you should start out focusing on fewer quality deals?
I mean, ultimately, I think that would come down to your marketing budget. If you have a big budget, if you can spend a lot of money, sure, why not scale up fast to where you can break a bunch of things like I did, and then have to go back to the drawing board and kind of figuring that out. The other side of it is, slow and steady wins the race, right? Like you can have, if you only have, let's say $100,000 and you want to spend 10K a month for a year, put that aside, have that be your spend, do it consistently over a year period. Once you start getting some deals in the pipeline and start replenishing that marketing budget, which you will pretty quickly as long as you have the right data, the right sales process, the right things in place, then continue to add that. And that's what I did. So like I added slowly, 5,000, then 10,000, then 15,000, then 20,000. Once I started seeing the results of the sales process and everything else taking place, I increased that budget. So earlier this year, like January, my budget was only 10K. And then February was like 15. And then March, April, like it slowly just went up in increments of 10, 5 to 10, until I got to a point where I was just seeing incredible results. We're starting to get a ton of deals that I was like, all right, let's go. Right. I'm just going to continue to spend until we're at a point where we're getting diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's easy to get excited about new markets or new strategies and not just, push what you're already doing to its maximum. So I think that's a smarter way to approach it. But
yeah. And if you had a big budget to start out with, like, you don't even know what to spend it on. Like if you're not doing coaching and you don't know where to spend it, where to buy your data, what data to use, what mail houses, what PPL sources are the best, what your sales process, like that part to me is huge, because if you don't have a proper sales process that you're following with these inbound leads, like your conversion is going to be awful. So you'll be wasting money at that point. And there was a few months where I felt like our sales process was a little flawed, and we had to go back, and I paused things to make sure, not completely paused, but just pulled back a little bit to make sure that we were still going back to our traditional process. Because if you go off a process for a few months, you're going to get into a bad habit of not doing your correct sales process, and you then can't replicate that system and know why you're not getting deals.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, no, it does. Clearly, you're a big proponent, and you're very intentional about your systems, which is something I'm working on getting better at. As we're moving towards the end of the show here, do you have any deals in particular this year, whether it be flips or wholesales, that are worth kind of doing a deep dive in to drive home any important points, or anything you could have learned from or wish you had known ahead of time?
I have a couple, yeah. So I for anyone who doesn't know what wholesale is or do, wholesale is where you still close on it like a traditional flip. Needs very little money to put into it in terms of a renovation, or no money at all, and you relist it. So I've bought in a couple of those this year, and they've never worked out to what I intended on having them work out to. So one of them, I was looking for a very particular buyer. I was able to pay more than what a flipper would pay. So I think I paid $550. When I sent it out as an assignment, everyone was like in the low fours, or excuse me, high fours. So I was like, I'm going to buy this deal because you can develop and you can put 16 units on this lot. Mm-hmm. The lot wasn't great. It had a slope on the back, so it was going to need a lot of like infill and soil stuff. But I called a few of my buddies and I'm like, hey, what do you think? What do you think about this deal? And they're like, I don't think you should take the risk. I don't think you should close on it. One of them was like, yeah, you should do it. We could probably sell for $700K. Bought it at $550, sell it for $700. So I decided to do it. I decided to close on the deal. I said, hey, if I lose money on it, this is my fault. Worst case scenario, I can sell it retail because it's still with remodel, and I can maybe break even on it. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I did end up going into escrow with a developer at $700,000 first day that I put it on the market. Then they backed out, and then I slowly had to reduce the price, and I think I walked away with like $19,000. But that was like, a 60 to 90 day period of like, what's going to happen here? Am I going to sell this to make money on it? Or is this going to be my first loss? Because I've still never lost on a deal. So that was one learning experience. And the second one, I'm actually closing on it tomorrow. They had another offer from Zillow. I ended up building a lot of rapport and relationship with the owner. I really did need it for like $20,000 less than what I bought it for, but she had a lot of moving pieces. They were moving out of the state. They wanted a quick close. So I gave them the price that they wanted, bought it for $653. I literally just painted it and staged it. I think I put like $11K into this house. And then we put it back on the market about a week and a half later. This was kind of when the market was shifting a little bit. Things weren't as aggressive. Things weren't selling quickly. Interest rates were a little higher. Ended up going into escrow at like 7. I think we're at 740 right now. And after fees and everything else, I'm walking away with like, I think $12,000. So those types of deals, having multiple exit strategies, I think is really important. One of the things I love about my operation and the fact that I wholesale is that I will still send out deals that I may that I may flip as a wholesale, just to see what my activity from other investors will be in the market. And if I don't get, let's say, the margin that I wanted to as an assignment, then I'll flip it and I'll take it on. But at least I know that I'm getting a good deal, right? I have one right now that we're closing at the end of the month. And I comped this thing out. And I'm like, I'm going to send it out as a wholesale just to see what I'd get on it. I think my highest offer was like 625, which was $100K over what I bought it for. So I'm like, okay, someone thinks that it's worth close to 800,000 if that's their number. And I knew it needed very minimal work. So I decided to actually flip it. And sure enough, great deal. But it's just instances like that, like you need to kind of check yourself a little bit. One, to know that there's multiple exit strategies that if I can wholesale a deal, I can flip the deal. If I can flip the deal, I can wholesale the deal, right? And if all three of those things, I can probably rent it out, even though I'll be negative. So it's just important not to just have one strategy going into any specific deal. So I like to have just multiple check marks of strategies on every deal.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, there's a number of lessons learned there, I think. That's important. And I like how you test the market a bit by sending out the ones that you likely will end up closing and flipping anyways. Well, Josh, this has been great. A lot of good insight here. Any questions that you think we missed that we should have asked that we didn't, or anything else you'd like to say in general?
I don't think so. I mean, this business is fun. It's really fun. It's really challenging. I think with any business, you're putting together puzzle pieces that make the business run smoothly. I don't think I would ever be able to get to where I'm at today if it wasn't for getting coaching over the last 12 months plus. That's really what I believe has transformed my business, because I have the confidence to go and spend money on marketing, be able to hire and onboard properly. So making informed decisions on a business when you have someone by your side that's experienced that does, 5 million plus in revenue is important. And I don't think I'd have the confidence to do it if it wasn't for that. So that's definitely a big part of how I've gotten to where I'm at today.
Yeah, one way or another, whether it's working for them or paying them, learning from someone who's where you want to be is the quickest way to shorten the learning curve. Well, Josh, where can people find out more about you?
Josh_Giordani is Instagram, Josh Giordani on YouTube, Modern Mindset podcast. But yeah, if anyone ever has any questions, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. I'm very active. Always happy to help.
Awesome. Well, we'll include links to everything in the show notes. But until next time, guys, Dan Haberkost and Mason McDonald with the Big Picture Blueprint, signing off.